I got tired just listening to all the things I allegedly do. But that's what you all do, many, many things. I want to thank Governor Andrus, who has been he's been front and center, which is really terrific. When you stand up here and you see him, it's really exciting. So thank you for coming. David Adler, gone above and beyond in both introducing introducers, and interviewing. It was one of those times as a journalist, I was looking at somebody and I was saying, thank God it's not me up there. But mostly I want to focus on you guys in my session. We haven't heard from you. So, So I'm going to try and keep my remarks fairly short, and then we're going to open up the mics and have at it, because there's a lot of energy coming from you and a lot of feelings and passions and responses to what you've heard. We need to get you into the mix and into the dialogue, particularly young women who I am passionate about. One of the things that I am so conscious of as one of those noisy baby boomers who is always dominating the airwaves with our various stories, is that we're not hearing enough from young women. We're not hearing their voices, we're speaking for them, and so when we open up the mics, I got a couple right here, we want to hear from you, and I'm just dying to know what your takeaway is from what has been said here. What has resonated with you, what is meaningful to you, and how we can go forward together, because otherwise, you're going to have a lot of exhausted older women that are just not going to be able to pull this cart. I'm going to go through my top 10 list, of which I cheerfully called 10 things we should tell our daughters. You know, my first thought when anybody stands up and says, I'm going to tell you blank, is I hope most of the women go, we have our own top 10 list. The drive here is to get women to use their own voices, to listen to your own hearts and souls. So take what I throw out with a big grain of salt, and then we will have a discussion about it. Okay, you ready? Top 10. I feel like David Letterman. Although he goes from 10 back up to 1, I'm going from 1 down to 10. Okay, number 1, imagine a big life. Imagine the biggest life you can. Don't see any barriers. Don't plan for the hitches. You know, for women, motherhood is out there, and that looms as both a great thing, but it can also be daunting, you can see a block coming, so you sort of, you make decisions based on how you might navigate that. Big. Don't be small, don't think small, don't let anybody make you small. And by big, I'm not talking fame and fortune, and I'm not even talking about, standing here and talking the way I am, although I do think, and in a minute I'm going to bring you up here so you can talk at this microphone, but that's both of you. That's my first thing, and I think the longer I live, the more I understand that a life is an act of imagination. You reimagine yourself. You have to keep pushing out your thoughts about who you are and your place on the planet and what it means to be alive and what it means to be a woman and what it means to be an engaged person at this time and at this place. One of the things, the theme that has come up and up, and I can feel it in you, we're all excited about how far we've come, but we all know we're hitting a stop sign. And we're all looking for a way to get around it. What are we going to do next? So you who are the next generations down, come with us. Okay, number 2, find something you're passionate about and can get paid for. You're going to have to make a living, even if you marry well, even if you marry rich, which is a concept so foreign to foreign to every way I operate. But, work that you love is as important as love. It is what you do. You've got to find something that moves you, a reason to get up every day. And there'll be down times in any career. You'll want to reorient. But the thing that I think we women have such a hard time doing is constantly checking in with our own gut. Is this working? Am I happy? I once gave a high school commencement address, and it was at a private school outside of Los Angeles, and all the parents were sitting there and the graduates were in the front row, and I said very cheerfully, "You don't have to become lawyers." And you could hear this groan go up from the parents, like, "Oh, she didn't just say that." You may want to be a lawyer, but you may want not to be. You may want to be one of these terrific CEO businesswomen. You may not want to be. You may want to be one of these unhinged writers. We've had a... Look, I'm cheerfully throwing myself in the unhinged writer category. But the point is to do what you want to do. But you do need to figure out how to make money at it. I am a child of Hollywood. My parents were actors, but they were divorced very early. My mother left my father in the early 50s when women weren't doing that, in part because he was this larger-than-life, sort of autocratic World War II era father and husband. He cast too large a shadow on my mother, who was an actress as he was an actor. She moved off. My mother never married again. I was raised by a single mom who I just lost. Sorry. I will talk about the tears of women in a minute, because we are denying ourselves the both political and personal use of them, but we'll get by that. My mother was fantastic. She was an actress. She loved it. But when I turned about 12, she had to leave acting. There were no parts for older women. She was probably then 30, whatever, 2. And she started to sell real estate on the west side of Los Angeles. She became extraordinarily successful. But let's admit it, her heart was a little broken. And that's okay, too. She was fantastic. She provided for my sister and me. She was a role model beyond belief. She was, in many ways, the love of my life. And people always say, "Oh, no, wasn't your husband?" And I said, well, I chose my husband. I didn't choose my mother. It's unexpected when you get the kind of love that I got from my mom and gave in return. So the good news for me was, the example was, I knew I wanted to be creative. I knew I wanted to be an unhinged creative type. And I only ever wanted to be a writer. Alexander and I were laughing. I mean, people, on these shows, people say to you, "Oh, what else would you have wanted to be other than a writer? A go-go dancer?" I mean, there is nothing. It's the only other thing I probably could have made money at, and I won't demonstrate it. It's this movement. Okay. And then I made it turns out to be a very propitious career move and a very complicated life move. I fell in love with a man in Los Angeles who was running the Newsweek bureau. He had been one of the foremost civil rights reporters in the country. He was in the South behind the lines in the early 60s. He and only one other reporter, in a day when you could not call anybody. You were out there. And he had grown up in an orphanage outside of North Carolina, ended up in Los Angeles in 1965, and in 1968, on a tennis court of friends, he was, of course, friends of the father, I was friends of the daughter, we fell in love. He was 22 years older, and he came with 4 small boys. Was I daunted? He was larger than life. He was a hero. I was daunted. I was overwhelmed. I was in love for life. And it was not easy. That is a very complicated choice. When I look at young women and we don't talk about those kinds of choices, I made it as much as possible with my eyes open, as you can do when you're 22 and wildly in love. The good news is and this is the biggest component to find in a man, he thought that my work even though I had barely put pen to paper, should be, could be, and would be as important as his contribution. And he let me know that in the beginning, which was crazy. This is the early 70s. He is a hero. I'm nobody. I'm this little schoolgirl saying, oh, I'm gonna be a writer. And the good news for me was what I call the civil rights for women had just kicked up big time in the early 70s. So as I started to write, inescapably I was able to use my voice to address what has been the passionate subject of my life, which is everything that we're talking about here. It has been a long pull, and I sat here yesterday, and half of me is exhilarated, and half of me is, really? So I should tell you, because I promised these two that I would tell, my very first assignment, unlike Karen Krause's, that was a story yesterday, if you all heard. At age 13, she interviewed an Olympic swimmer, and she was on a roll. But that was serious. I decided for my first interview, don't ask me why, to go interview, there was a famous topless dancer in San Francisco named Carol Doda, if any of you remember. Yeah. Why? I had this idea as a young, feisty feminist that I would go confront or talk to, or in fact, what you do, figure out who she was, what had motivated her, please. So I fly to San Francisco and stay with my sister who's there, and I go off to the Condor Club. It's sleazy. This is San Francisco in the 70s. It's wonderfully sleazy. And I go in, and some very big, tough guy takes me to her dressing room, and I sit there, and she's on stage, and she's gonna come, and I'm gonna interview her, and I'm thinking, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this journalism? Carol Doda comes through the door, nothing on but a G-string, and she was famous for the first major league silicone breasts, but I mean, they weren't very good at that point. It was like looking at two gun whales. And I thought to myself, how am I gonna do this? How am I not supposed to look at these? She must have thought I was an idiot. You know, there I am with my little notebook. Gee, how did you start in this business? I don't know. The wonderful thing about that experience, I never could pull off an interview. It had some of what went on yesterday. You know, the teeth pulling. Give me something. She wasn't very quotable. Let's put it that way. So, but the funniest thing was I went back that night, and my sister, who was very gifted, a year older, I'm very close to, I described it to her, and my sister, who was thinking about becoming a writer, said that was at the moment she said, it's not the profession for me. And she never told me this until many years later. I, of course, thought it was a fabulous story, that I was out in the world, that I was going to meet all these strange people, starting with Carol Doda. I hoped more serious down the road. And Avery, my beloved sister, said, I can't do that. And it was so interesting because she never told me that, and she's always wanted to be a writer. She became a very successful architect because she's so damn talented. But I always felt responsible afterwards. I thought, really? Carol Doda really did that? Obviously, I wanted to interview more serious people. I'm going to give you a quick bio because bunches of you have asked how I got to do what I do. And I've always been freelance, dispositionally unsuited to employment. And you can do that. I mean, I say to young women, you can put a life together on your own terms. It's hard. You live with financial insecurity, but it's doable. I mean, we hear a lot about networking and all that kind of stuff. That is a certain kind of life, which is terrific. The only people I network with are my dogs. You know, I get up in the morning and say, how are you doing? Let's go. But you can do that. I then sat in the dining room at my Smith Corona, pre-computer, pounding away, sending things out into the ether. And the first piece I had in print was in Newsweek in 1974, and it was a piece with the I Hope Not My given title because it's terribly pompous, but it was Up From Slavery to What? And it was a piece saying in 1974, that we women are asking to get into every game. We're into the boardrooms, into everywhere, but we're giving it away right now if we don't ask to change the game. And I knew it in my gut, and I took a lot of grief from a lot of my, you can't be a fellow feminist, sister feminists, because they said, you know, we just need to, you know, break through the ceilings and break in. I got that, but I think part of the reason we are where we are today is we have not faced some of those issues. I was hoping as women, with all that energy and power then, we would talk about how do you do the work-motherhood balance? How do we help young women stay in the workforce, function at the highest level when we give them no support for motherhood? I mean, there's no daycare system that works. I mean, these are things I don't want to spout, but anyway, so from there I went on. I did a couple of long profiles for the New York Times Magazine. I had a very eclectic curiosity. I did a long piece on Truman Capote, the writer, which Karen and I have talked about. I hung out with him for 4 months. This was about a year and a half before he died. This was also before the books, certainly before the movies about him came out. So I was sort of new to the turf, and it was a magical time for a young writer to be with an old writer, and he was very generous with his time, but also the inadvertent lesson was, this is a man who had sold his soul for fame, and he knew it, and he was drinking himself to death. And it was an inadvertent gift he gave me, because I looked at him and I thought, that's a trap. You know, you gotta write what you want to write and keep writing. You know, you don't get seduced by the gold stars you get along the way. I also spent 4 months with Teddy Kennedy when he was running for president. As I said, I did do 2 alcoholics back to back, because Teddy also had his drinking issues in those days. So going from Truman to Teddy, I was in for that. I understood the vicissitudes of the drunken personality. Then I got into television. And the only reason I did television was because it was a medium that seemed powerful to me and I could use my voice. I did not care particularly about being on television. It is obviously a visual medium. And you know, the funniest thing is, no matter where you are, even nice people would come up to you and they would say, your hair's different. As opposed, now really, some people would say that was a great piece, but they say your hair's different. And then they would say there was a long beat and they said, I liked it better the other way. I had a great run with Jim Lehrer. It's one of the great programs on television. They let me, again, use my voice. Every choice I made was to use my voice and not have somebody try to strangle it. That's what you need to do, especially if you're going to be a writer. You find ways that your voices don't let them over-edit you, and that's Karen Krause's triumph. I don't know if you read her, but you all will after now. Her triumph is to have preserved her voice in the most over-edited, heavy paper in the country. The greatest paper, the New York Times, but if you can hold on to your voice in the New York Times, it is a massive triumph. Shout out to you. Okay, I better pick up. Number 3, we're only at number 3. Find a cause you believe in that takes you outside of your work, your head, your heart, everywhere, and put it into that. It can be global warming. You know, my feeling is it would be great if you'd sign on to this equality business because we're going to need you, but something that engages you beyond your immediate perimeters. And it's not just giving back. We use that phrase. It's part of being alive. It's just part of breathing. And because women, I think, are imperiled again, I just do. When I wake up in the United States of America and read one more piece about sexual assault in the military, I'm full of shame. How did we let this happen? It's insane. And one of the things, back to Dr. Hellman's piece, I was thinking about us not being allowed to be angry. We're not also allowed to be passionate as women. You know, it's one of the things they've been able to do to us, to mute us. And I realized that if I'm ever in a situation, particularly on television, when something like sexual assault comes up, I go into my rational speak. You know, this isn't good or this is that. When I want to say, how do you think it feels for any woman to be in this country and know this is allowable. I mean, we're filled of shame, and we're filled with rage, and we're filled with passion about it. And this is what it looks like. And maybe we need that element back. It doesn't have to be, outrage maybe not anger. Passion, I know, it's a hard sell. All right, moving along. Okay, number 4, don't be too nice. Women fall into the trap of niceness. Kindness, of course, kindness is underrated. Niceness, overrated for women. And the other thing, don't be too perky, because that, and especially on television, I mean, there's still, I don't want to mention names, you all know, but there's not an anchor person, practically a female anchor person, who isn't perky. I mean, there they are. Here's my new, you're gonna have my new pet peeve. Here they are, they're all sleeveless, right? So they want to show their buff muscles. That's the new body tyrannies. You've got to have these buffed upper arms. That's why I have my jacket on. I don't have Michelle Obama arms. In any event, they're all so darn perky. You know, they can be announcing a sexual assault in the military. And there's this bright-eyed, well-coiffed, perkiness. You don't have to do that. Don't be too nice. Don't be too perky. Kind, yes. Okay. Where are we now? That's, oh my Lord. That's, okay. Number 5, hold on to your friends. Hold on to the friends, hold on to, yeah, you two, sitting nice. I can't see the rest of you, but I know there are other young women out there sitting with friends, and I know there are a lot of women here who are with friends. It is our lifeline. Let's be real. I mean, it is the gift. And I'm always astonished when people say to me, oh, I never talked to my old friend, you know, life intervened, or I had a falling out with, fall out with your husband, don't fall out with your friends. I mean, really, your friends are for life. They know you, they've got your back, they've got your soul. That's what they've got. Don't lose, I mean, life gets complicated. You go off into different directions. Some of you have babies, some of you won't. It will seem to do this. Stay in touch. And one other thing, I mean, all the social media is great for that, but it's an illusion of intimacy. You want to hear each other's voices. I have 5 friends from high school, and I talk to them. Because if we email, I need to hear their voices. I need to hear their tears. I need to hear their guffaws. And you don't get that in an email. And then you need to see them in person, but that, does get harder. But to young women, I say, oh, for goodness sakes, stay in touch, stay together. Okay. Number 6. Okay. Learn to live with your regrets. This is probably a little early for you to have to hear this, because you shouldn't have none. You should be shouldn't have any. I think that was slightly grammatical. One of the tasks for anybody, but I think for women in particular, is how do you assimilate your regrets and not let it tear you down? We can do that. Women do tend, all the studies show, we tend to brood more about things that happen to us. My major regret is that I never had children. And I wrote very passionately about it when I knew it was not going to be a reality. I'd been married. I'd been struggling to be a writer on my own terms. I was part of a generation who was holding off having babies. I held off till about 35, then decided, I always wanted children. It wasn't that I was in any way doing this. I started to try to get pregnant and ran into all of the things that one can run into, infertility, whatever. I did everything. I did all the fancy procreative things. That was awful. I have no regrets about that. I would do that again. But the end result was I didn't get a baby. If you don't want children, that's fine. But if you do, you have to pay attention to that. And I did write the book for that reason. It really was to say to young women, this is one thing that'll get away from you, fertility. So in the mix, just be conscious of it. Don't let anybody oversell motherhood. It's not like the be-all and end-all. But if it's something you want that is part of your life, pay attention. So, you know, the people ask me when I go around and said, you know, people, are you over it? I'm not over anything. I don't want to be over anything, you know? But you live with it, and you tuck it in, and you go forward, and life is rich, and you draw from other things. And in my case, I have 4. I am happy to say I have 4 fabulous stepsons. My youngest stepson, of course, is in his late 50s. And my youngest grandson, who, don't tell anyone, he's the love of my life, is 11. I have two, there were 4 girls and 4 boys, and the most marvelous thing is the 2 boys, who were the last grandchildren, came on this earth talking. And I was born talking. I mean, I want to talk about things. I want to talk about what we're cooking for dinner. I want to talk what I read. These kids, as my 11-year-old said to me, "Oh, Grandma Annie, I think I'm yours." I said, all right, regrets. Caregiving. Caregiving, beware of the caregiving trap. But this is a very complicated one for me. I have done a lot of caregiving. I am, by nature, a caregiver. I take great pleasure out of caregiving. The point is what we want to draw as women, how much of our self-affirmation do we want to draw from caregiving? A lot, probably, but it can also stop you from doing work. So the boundaries need to be, you need to pay attention to your boundaries. I did not raise a child, so the motherhood thing is very, I know, very difficult for a lot of the women that I know and love. You know, how much, you know, do you quit and stay home? Where do you put the baby? You know, does your heart get, you know, fall so in love that you want to get off the career track? These are all things we need to be talking about. My caregiving has come intensely, sorry. In the last 5 years. And I know there are women out here doing what I did who have lost as I've lost. First my mother and then my husband. And I lost work time. I set projects aside, but I did it with my eyes open. Eyes open is a big one for women. We can close our eyes. I knew what I was doing. I could not do anything differently. I could not have them not have me with them. They were my joy. I own that, and that's fine. But the other thing is I think we need to talk about it because a lot of women are getting isolated in these last stretches. They're seeing husbands out, and then to do battle with the medical profession, which God knows I've done, and I assume many of you done too. And boy, do you ever need to keep your female voice strong to deal with that set of not just guys now, but women too. I mean, it's a fight to get the kind of care you want for the people you love, and you have to do it. If you're, you know, that to me is part of being human. So I fought with a lot of doctors. I laughed a lot with my sister. I had a couple of glorious last years with both my mother and my husband where everything was said. We needed to do that. That's who we were. And I say to you, that's way in the future, but I know there are a lot of women here. And I just think it's something we could talk about and we could share it. And people talk about grief. And when I run into people, I know in the kindest way they say to me, "So you're better." Well, I'm better. I'm better. I can get up in the morning. You know, it's not like there's, but again, there's a part of me that's shattered. You know, these are people I lived my life with. And that's okay too. And I would draw from the warmth and the sisterhood of other women. Would we be talking about that? Instead of these carefully manicured, shall be nameless books about grief that don't spill the truth, that don't say how we really feel, that don't say what it's like to sit with somebody and hold their hand when they can't draw a breath. Okay. Sorry, girls. Moving along. Oh, good. Here's the new one. Make a fool of yourself. Wait. Don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself. I forgot that part. You got to make a fool of yourself. I mean, at some point, I mean, I think we women are, we're supposed to behave certain ways. And I don't know what that means. It certainly doesn't mean you have to be Miley Cyrus doing a... Although I have been practicing my twerking just so that I... At risk of being, she's looking at me right here and she's saying, are you going to self-objectify? I'm not, no, twerking is much, I could do the pole dance. The twerk is all through here, just so you know, and it's quite lascivious. Now, I do think having a twerking party with other women, yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that, and privately I'll do it. But I do think we have to have, I mean, one of the other things that's so crazy is there's so much fun in this room. Haven't you had fun these last days? You've talked, you've laughed, you've had fun. And that we get cut off from too, the idea that we're supposed to be fun as women, you know, as humans. But for women, we have a great capacity for joy, silliness, humor, you know, and not to take ourselves so seriously. At the same time, we take the world seriously. So everybody learn to twerk, okay. None of that tame Pilates stuff, you know? Okay. Okay. Age on your own terms. We've had a little of this, and this is for the you know. Partially what happened to feminism is that the consumer market got a hold of it really quickly and understood the part that was exploitable and the part that they could get us, women, as we were all, you know. They would suddenly start selling us products that in fact made us sexier, younger, and it has tracked right through the time frame. So now, if you look at a cover where there's a supposed 60-something woman, well, let me tell you, she's been photoshopped to the nines, shot with Botox and every other thing, and I'll tell you, I once did a piece for Vogue, and they said they were gonna take a picture. Well, I've had pictures taken. You figure somebody comes with a camera. Well, not with Vogue and not in today's world. So an army of people up here, 10 or 12. My husband said, what's going on? They came with high-heeled shoes. They weren't going to see my feet. They bought acres of clothes, makeup people, hair people. But the most arresting thing that came in was this enormous, flat computer, huge, and two men who sat at the computer. So after they'd spackled me up and done what they could do, took me outside to photograph me, I walked in, they were already photoshopping me. I said to him, why did you bother to make me up when you can do this? Just fix me. I mean, we spent hours doing my hair and makeup when you can do it all. So, everybody you see in a magazine, including the youngest, have been photoshopped. I mean, that is just, you know, everybody. I mean, it's what's happening. Okay, 60 is not the new 40. I don't know if you've all heard the joke, if 60 is the new 40, is death the new 80? Here's why 60 isn't the new 40. It's great that women are aging with more energy and verve and self-possession, all that I see in those of you, the few of you out there that are that age. But we give away so much by acceding to that myth, because by 60, you have lost things. You have history. You have wounds. You have wisdom. You have authority. 60 is not the new 40. So when you hear somebody say it, trust me, it just isn't. And not to mention if your knees hurt and those few other physical things we all might carry. But it's just a way, again, for us to be slightly dispossessed. Okay, I gotta move along so we can open the mics. Okay, last one, get a dog. All women need dogs. Here's the thing that I think. Everybody needs a dog. My husband fell in love with the dog I gave him. But here's why dogs and women are just unnatural. I have this feeling that we have so much unused love that it gets damaged and gets siphoned off and whatever. And then there's this dog And all he wants to do is take what joy and love you can give him. You can fawn, you can hug, you can sleep with them, as I do. Get a dog. Okay, those are my top 10. And do we have, I don't know where we are for time. Do we have any time for me to hear from any of you? Yes, yeah. Do we, and where are the?
So, Ann.
Yes, sir.
We love your questions, so we've got a mic here and a mic over there. And please do use the microphone since we're taking this for posterity for the next 200 years.
We better have moved this ball down the road for the next 200 years. Also, I've got a better idea. You guys, come up here. I want you to see what it looks like. Are there any other young women that want to come up here and look out? Come on. If there are any other students or young women who want to just come up here and look out? See?
Oh boy.
That's your world. Isn't that great? There, come on. Yay. Any other, okay, if any of you have pride a first question. If any of you want to ask a question? But you see, this is your place. Okay.
Hi. So I think that the most important thing for us right now to do is say thank you to all of the speakers and Dr. Adler and Governor Andrus and Margaret and Liz and Susan that let the two of us volunteer. This is an opportunity that we've never had before. And for us to be able to come here and build a relationship with these people who can impact and change our futures and speak to us and really shake the ground on which we stand and change our lives. I mean, it's unbelievable for us, and we're so appreciative. Thank you.
Lovely. That's great.
I wrote down a lot of questions because I have so many things that I want to know, but honestly, I think that one thing that we see often is that the word feminism carries a negative connotation. And I mean, how do you really, I asked Alexandra Fuller this last night, I said, how do you deal with failure, and how do you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to try again, especially when you have a word like feminism that people, that we use to say, I'm a feminist because I'm a woman, and I believe that equality is it's supposed to be there. We're all supposed to be equal but that's a different thing. How do you continue to try in a world that is constantly knocking you down, and in a place where you walk past a group of guys on campus who whistle and say, hey, baby, nice ass, and you're like, no, you don't get to talk to me like that. But how do you say that? How do you take the courage and really, I don't.
I think when you said that, the two people here said just like that, it takes courage to say, you can't talk to me like that. I don't like that. That's offensive. That hurts my feelings. That's not okay. But it's hard. But, that's your voice. So probably what you ought to do is just practice. I literally practiced talking to an empty chair when I had to have a conversation with my father. And, to say to him, literally that, and I was a grown woman, you can't talk to me that way. That's not going to work anymore. And mean it. And know that we're all behind you, that we're all right there, and that you have every right to say it and should say it. So next time it happens, you can email me next time it happens. Yeah. Anybody, you got another question from up here? Any, you?
I don't know, like what I've done is that, like, you know how you, in high school and middle school, you get cast in the stereotypes, and like people, like basically put you in a class of, oh, you're a nerd, oh, you're a prep, kind of things like that. Well, what I found that I had to do is that I had to stand up against my own friends, which was really hard, and that when they would try to tell me, like, oh, we're on the unpopular kids, and we're the nerds, we're the theater geeks, I said, you can't put that on me. And I think that was a hard lesson that had to be learned, that I couldn't allow anyone, even my own friends, to label me. And I think that that's an important lesson that we need to teach our daughters and even our sons, is that it's not just other people, it's your own friends, it's your family, and things like that.
Terrific. Really great. Any questions, anybody?
I've seen her on the NewsHour since before I can remember, and I was just wondering if you would talk a little bit about being on the NewsHour.
Okay,
I'm curious.
I'll be brief. I loved it. I mean, and it was I had a very collaborative thing. It went. There were no layers. Jim and Robin ran that show, so they knew when I threw an idea up for an essay. These essays were, I wrote 600 words. I don't know if you all know, that's what is that, 2/3 of a page? Something like that. Very short. The fun thing about writing short is, man, do you have to think hard, and do you have to edit hard? And that, I loved it. I got, I'd done the profile on Truman Capote was 8,000 words, and now I'm going to 600. You can say a lot in 600 words. So I talked to them. The idea was accepted. I wrote the piece. They saw the piece. I don't remember a single word being changed. And that was remarkable. But I was not doing what I would call hardcore politics. They covered politics. I mean, I wasn't going to go on and say, I don't like President so-and-so and he's, this or that. It was more cultural, but I was allowed to do a lot of women's stuff. I was allowed to talk about issues because it didn't seem to them as political as it clearly was, which I knew. So it was a really, I did, gosh, it was like 15 years. I did a couple of pieces, sometimes 2 or 3 a month. I shot them every week. They often sent the producer, who I became very close to, they always sent him from Washington. We often shot in my house. We shot in every room of my house. We used every room, so we finally went to my mother's house. You just use room after room after room. And the lovely thing about it is that I was on camera very little, and they then took it away and did this wonderful tone poem, if you ever saw them. They did these lovely, they did video that backed it up and whatever. So, but again, I mean, I think that the takeaway for me was it was the one place in television I could find that let me be me. Yeah. And that's what I guess the bottom line of all this, be me, be you. And that's what you're all, and that's what you're talking about. One thing that comes up again and again is this word feminism. I don't have a good answer. It is the word we have to own. There's no way we can course correct. It got badly damaged along the way by all kinds of negativity, which it shouldn't have. Even recently, we were talking about the woman, Mayer, what's her first name? The one that they had the Vogue shoot of in the kitten shoot. What's her first name? Marissa Mayer. She was quoted as saying, here she is the head of Facebook. Which? Yahoo, sorry. Shows you I have no attachment to the world of money. I see we front-loaded this conference with the people that came along and told you how to make money. The writers come along and say, gee, speak up, have a great life. We can't worry about your bank accounts. You can do both, trust me. She was quoted as saying, feminists were, what did she say? They had chips on their shoulders and were militant. Oh, nonsense, it's such old school. And for her to say it, it's obscene. I mean, but here's the good news. See, this is where I'm looking at you with hope. Because we don't know what to do. We're trying to, so own it, own the word feminism, stand up for it? Yes, of course.
Okay. First, what's your name? Alexandra.
Alexandra, I'm kind of jealous that you learned that lesson so young. I learned it about 3 years ago when I got to college, so good job. I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned from our Student Leadership and Involvement Center, which is amazing and just right outside this room, is that we don't need to wait to start leading and doing things and living our dream. Yay. We have so many resources here on our campus, and all you need is the idea and to start talking about it. And that has been my takeaway from my experience as being just around leaders and advocates for young people to step up and start doing anything that they want and anything that they can dream.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Anybody else? You guys are terrific. You do give, I'm so glad we did this because now I'm going to leave hopeful. I wasn't exactly sure. I don't know, we must be. I don't know where we are.
20 more minutes.
Oh, great.
No, 15.
So now let's hear from you all.
Aaron has a question.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it's fair that other presenters get to ask. You guys, why don't you sit and stay? Sit down and stay here. Yeah. We may need you. Come on up. It's kind of fun up here. Why didn't everybody come up here? I hate hierarchy anyway. I don't like podiums and hierarchy. Anybody wants to come up, come on up and look out. It's really good out.
These young ladies are so amazing. Some of these lessons I had not really even learned yet. But I just wanted to say in reply to the one that the hardest thing that I had to learn was that it's okay if not everybody likes you or loves you. I think it's part of the people-pleasing personalities that a lot of us have, that it's such a hard lesson to learn. And for me in the sports writing business, what I had to realize is that sometimes when people don't like you, it's not about you. The higher that I've gone in the business, the less liked I am by my male peers. And that's such a tough thing as a woman to absorb, because you're conditioned to almost perform for men, so you want them to love you. And I realized that it was a very, very hard lesson that I've come to much, 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 much older than these amazing young women, that just as long as you follow your dreams, it's actually going to put you in the path of some of these men that they're not going to be too pleased, they're going to fight back. And so you have to just put your head down and follow your dreams, be your true self, and the people that are that gravitate towards you, those are the people that you want in your life. The rest of them, just let them fall away. When I told the story yesterday about my middle school friend who reminded me that was not an assigned project, but an extra credit project, she also said to me, you know, the one thing I really admired about you in junior high was that you really didn't care what anyone thought of you. You had this like fearlessness that I really admired. And I was so taken aback. It was like she was talking about a stranger. It certainly wasn't the person I remember myself to be in junior high. But I think that's the gift of having a passion and having a goal, is that your head is down and you're so busy trying to improve yourself that what people are saying about you is just sort of white noise. So.
I've loved the discussions in the last 2 days, and I've enjoyed your top 10 for young women. I would like to see a top 10 for young men.
Sure.
Because if we're not teaching and educating our young men, I think that's where we have a lot of potential, especially as parents of sons. That's where we can start saying, when they're young, helping them to see the the objectifying of women
Yeah.
and all of those things. And, addressing your comment about you walk by a young man and they make these comments to you, well, that's where we've got to start too, is it can't just be empowering our daughters. It's empowering our men to buck the culture and be different
Absolutely.
and understand what being a man is.
Yes. Yeah. So the next conference will be all about that. We'll just have a whole sea of young men. It's very interesting because my husband, since he grew up in an orphanage, his father had died. He had no father figure, and he learned how to be a father with his sons, and it took a long time. And all 4 of my stepsons are terrific fathers, and it was, I think, of all the things that my husband was pleased about, he would have been most pleased about that he had passed on and put on the earth or helped nurture, men who had the idea that their wives were less equal. It would have been, and Carl had to learn that the hard way. He didn't come into this marriage. I mean, we had many a royal battle over the fact that I wanted to be independent and wanted to travel, and he was lonesome. He was ready to settle down, and he had this young adoring bride, and I said, no, I'm on the next plane to New York. And so, but I think that it's such a good point about boys, and I think the culture has gotten so much harder on boys. I was talking to Dr. Hellman again. My niece is 26. She has a lovely boyfriend, and either he or one of his friends wrote a blog post that I saw that was just heartbreaking, and or gross or something. He said, I have seen so much pornography, not even, actively really needing to find it, but it's there. They have a computer. He said, I've seen so many hideous things by my age, more than my father in a lifetime would ever have seen, that I had to relearn how to be gentle, how to be real, how to be a sexual human being without that kind of awful stuff. That's a real fight, because the airwaves, back to self-objectification, and and then all the ads, all the pressure on older men, Viagra and Cialis. Every time I see one of those ads, I think, oh, poor men. Really? You get to a point where you're a lovely guy and you're warm and you've worked hard and you've raised good kids, and now we're saying, okay, so, well, I just think that the truth is that the commercial culture pressures everybody, and it's throwing things at men that are wounding as well. Okay. Yes.
Hi, and I know I'm short, you cannot see me. Can I
Yes,
go
we
on
can.
stage?
Oh, come! We like everybody up here. It's much more fun up here.
Hi, I'm Yuwen. I'm from Taiwan. So I know I look like a 14 years teenager. I'm 25. I'm a doctoral student in education at BSU. Thank you, Anne. As a Chinese, I really appreciate today's speech. As Chinese, we are educated to be submissive to men. We need to listen what your parents said and always listen, and then try to be nice to everyone. But when I'm here, I realize that when I treat people very well, but I feel like I lost myself. And thank you, and tell us, don't be too nice to everyone. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for empower us. I thought it's just only Chinese women has this kind of problem. And as Americans here, we all need to learn how to love ourselves. Yeah, thank you, Anne.
Oh.
Thank you, Anne.
The only other thing I say to these women is, as you strike out, as you hear these things, as you say to the next guy, don't say that, or you stand up, you need each other. get a group so you can share these things, so you can, because what happens to women is we get isolated. And so your acts of bravery dissipate. Get a group together. Start something that is just an informal, so when she comes back and says, you'll never guess what I did, or you'll say, you never guess what I did, it builds this marvelous, that's really what happened with feminism. I mean, I don't know who got the idea that it was a lot of hairy-legged, humorless harpies. Wasn't that, we never was, or whatever it was. We never shaved, we were humorless. It was so much fun. But you need each other. So start a group. Okay.
That's it?
Okay, I want to thank you all. Given the energy and enthusiasm and response, we've all, and the happiness of all the women who've been here, because this doesn't happen much anymore, you know. This has been a really wonderful conference for that. We've all told David that he should have everybody back next year, and he's agreed. We'll see you all next year.